Mike, welcome to Floor Talk. It's great to have you on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is remarkable.
So, Mike, you've gone from world champion sailor to CEO and co-owner of the U.S. SailGP team with Ryan McKillen, founding engineer at Uber. So tell me about your journey and your decision to acquire the U.S. team.
I spent the last almost 20 years competing, and I used to find myself on Monday morning after a race, whether I won or maybe I got my butt kicked. I kind of always felt the same way, that I was missing the competition throughout the week. And I started to study other athletes. And I remember LeBron talking about wanting to be more than an athlete. I started kind of, how do these athletes commercialize themselves, their teams, their businesses? And so for me, this is a way for me to be able to compete kind of 24/7. And as I get to the end of my racing career, it allows me to, have that in my life. And I love the business side of things. And, it's a constant battle to bring on new partners and, marketing and building a team culture, on and off the water. So it allows me to be able to do that every day of the week.
Now, speaking of bringing on new partners, you've got a star-studded group backing the team, including Lindsey Vonn, DJ Khaled, and Issa Rae. So how did that all come together?
I've been at this for probably 6 or 7 years when I really decided that I was going to go after, trying to create a team that's commercially sustainable and bring in partners so that you're not relying on patronage. It's all about relationships. And, I think we knocked on a lot of doors, and I set myself up with some pretty big dreams that sometimes feel pretty crazy. But I wanted to be able to dip into, other markets, right? What Lindsey has done for skiing. She's an icon, a global icon, right? And there's a huge connection between the demographics that sail and ski. So we thought that was a natural connection. And obviously she's, a just unbelievable competitor, right? So the things we can learn from her in the boardroom are just unlimited. What DJ Khaled's done for golf, and his kind of let's go golfing theme that he's built the last few years. When I saw that, I immediately sent him a DM and said, let's go sailing. I have a relationship with Rock Nation, and one thing led to another. And when you start to, work really, really hard and not afraid of being told no, your dreams start to, little bits of them can turn into reality. And that's kind of what I always tell myself.
Now, SailGP is growing fast, both as a sport and as a business. What momentum are you seeing, and how is the U.S. team leaning in?
Yeah, the momentum and the growth is just through the roof, right? What Larry Ellison and Russell Coutts, what they dreamed up, 6-7 years ago, and what's come to fruition is, I think, beyond most wildest dreams. This year in the U.S., our TV numbers on CBS, we're averaging almost 840,000 viewers on the U.S. broadcast for the first 3 races of the season. To kind of put that into perspective, National Hockey League is kind of in the 500,000, Formula One's 1.1 million, Major League Baseball is 1.1 million. So we're in the conversation. We're by no means as big as they are, kind of overall footprint, but we're starting to be in the conversation, and that's a huge start. Right now we have 13 races around the world. There's 12 teams. And what's unique about SailGP is the racing is really close to the cities that we race in. So here in New York City, we'll be racing right off the financial district in between the Statue of Liberty and Governor's Island. And it's easy for New Yorkers to come and check it out. SailGP's really brought the racing closer to the fan. And because of that, the fans, have easy access, and the growth is real.
Now, Mike, we know emerging sports leagues are really taking off. Are you keeping an eye on what other emerging sports leagues are doing?
Yeah, I think I watch what all the different sports leagues are doing, right? What Formula One has done with Drive to Survive. Before Drive to Survive, the average American wasn't really that fussed about Formula One. All of a sudden, we started getting connected to the drivers and their personalities, and Max Verstappen's competitive instinct and Daniel Ricciardo's smile and personality, and all of a sudden, that show created millions of fans. And so I love to look at things like that, what people are doing well, and try to implement what we're doing. I think you see it with what we do with Tommy Hilfiger, with kind of bringing fashion into the U.S. SailGP team. There's more made about, a WNBA or an NBA walk-in moment with what the athletes are wearing sometimes than there are the game that's actually played, right? And so trying to, look at what these other leagues and teams are doing successfully, but we also need to be innovating ourselves, right? You can't just copy what they're doing and expect to have the same results.
Now, the SailGP NYC race is coming up June 7th to 8th. What should fans look forward to?
I like to position each race, and I hope as SailGP grows, each race has its own identity, right? You look at what the Art Basels or the Kentucky Derby or things like that, right? They become the Super Bowl. They just become these cultural lifestyle moments, right? People say they're going to the Super Bowl. They might go for the week before. They don't actually even go to the game. They're just there for all the festivities. The US Open here in New York City, right? You see all the parties at all the restaurants, and you see the Cadillac cars going around town with the logos on the side, right? How do we add that to SailGP? And I think it's the perfect time of the year. The spring in New York City is the best time of year, and before people go to the Hamptons or the Jersey Shore or Connecticut, whatever New Yorkers kind of do in the summer, this is kind of that first weekend of summer to come out and have a good time and be by the water and watch a bunch of boats. Hopefully there's good wind, and to be able to see a bunch of F-50s going 60 miles an hour, which is a pretty unique experience.
Well, it definitely sounds exciting. Mike, it's been wonderful to talk with you. Well, thanks for joining me on Flow Talk today.
Thank you for having me.